Hey everyone, welcome to Soul Sparks. I'm your host, Saima, and today we have an extraordinary guest, Scott Gruss. Scott is the author of How to Evolve During the Trump Experience Whether Humanity Joins You or Not, and a teacher of nonviolent communication. He is here to help us navigate the fear and division in our world with humor, empathy, and wisdom. Let's dive into his insights and learn how we can evolve during these challenging times. So, what inspired you to write How to Evolve During the Trump Experience Whether Humanity Joins You or Not?
Well, I was living in the United States and Donald Trump won the first election. And I started to write about it from a universal perspective. And I just felt compelled, like I had to share this big picture perspective on the subject to soothe troubled hearts, to give people hope and give people some direction on what they can do with their pain, fear, anger, so that they could take care of themselves while the world seems to be going extra crazy.
Okay, that was great. Can you share a specific moment that sparked this idea?
Sure. So my daughter was 3 years old,
Mm.
and we were playing on the bed, and suddenly she slapped me, and it was pretty hard. And so I raised my hand as if to slap her back. And my hand just stopped in the air. And it was like one of those moments where time just stopped. And I was able to have a conversation with my hand. And I asked, "Hey, what are you about to do?" And my hand says, "I'm going to slap her back." And I said, "Really? What, what's your purpose? Why would you want to do that?" And the answer was to teach her a lesson in nonviolence. Now, that was a pretty funny little moment. And it allowed me to put my hand back. And it inspired me to reflect on all of the times that I feel like it's I'm entitled to return somebody's violence with more violence. To somebody's angry, I get angry back. I match their energy. And it's not really where my heart is. It's not really what I want to do. It's not what Gandhi taught. It's not what Martin Luther King did. If I really, or Jesus, if I really want to make a difference and teach somebody nonviolence, I must be nonviolent. So I've been applying that to Trump. And even though the people who voted for him and him himself, I have strong disagreements with, I have been aspiring to not criticize and get socially and politically active by pointing the finger at what I don't want, but instead, in turn, take my energy and stand up for what I do want. And that is a world where everyone's fed and everyone has enough, and that we have outgrown the need for war and violence and greed.
That's really an inspiring story. So, how did it shape your approach to writing the book?
How did it shape my approach?
To
Well,
writing the book?
I didn't feel like I wrote the book. It wrote itself through me. Like I don't write books. I receive downloads from the universe. So yes, my life experiences brought me to the point where my you could say my life purpose is to bring people together who are thinking that they're enemies. And it starts with integrating my shadow, bringing my ego into the presence of love so that I am no longer an enemy towards myself. that's the hardest and the most important part of the work, is to find peace inside.
Ah, that's really admirable. What are the key steps to evolving during the Trump experience?
What are the gifts?
What are the key steps to evolving during the Trump experience?
Oh, yes. Okay. Well, in the book, I have 12 steps, because they're kind of like the 12 steps of recovery, because I
Mhm.
believe that America and our world is in a very severe state of addiction and hopefully hitting bottom. So the first step is to admit that you are grieving and do grief work. So a lot of times people are so angry and so outraged, and they don't realize that underneath the anger is a sense of sorrow, and there's so many tears that the anger wants to protect. So step one is go beyond and underneath the anger and start to feel your sadness. Step two, whatever qualities you think Donald Trump lacks, give more. Give more of them. In other words, you think he's arrogant? Work on your humility. You think he's unkind? Work on your kindness. The first time he was elected, a friend of mine had a party, and she had us all cut out pieces of paper and write anonymous love notes to strangers, like little notes, colorful notes that we would leave on their cars that would say something like, "You are loved more than you could ever know." So we went and we just spread these messages on all the different cars and underneath doorsteps, and just planted them throughout the neighborhood. So this is an example of when there appears to be somebody who is not loving, the answer is to give more love. And I think Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world.
Those steps really sounds powerful. How can we address the fear that fuels division and hatred?
How can we address the fear that fuels, division and hatred? Uh, I can only do that for myself and be an example, because everybody pops in their own time. In other words, when everybody has free will, and if they're digging their heels in and committed to being in hate, there's no way they can be talked into their fear or out of their hatred. And so I don't try to change other people. What I do is I work on myself and speak about what I'm learning and what I'm healing. And that's the only way people can learn, is by seeing role models, and hopefully I'm modeling what I'm teaching.
All right. What practical tools can we use to manage our own fears?
Alcohol, heroin, opium, Valium. That was a joke. uh, what practical tools? Well, I use something called EFT tapping, in which I tap on acupressure points while stating my fears and then stating affirmations. I would say breathing, meditating, and really fear is the autonomic it's the sympathetic nervous system creating fight or flight responses, adrenaline and cortisol. So whatever you do that lessens the fear, it could be talking to your inner child, reminding yourself that you're safe no matter what. If you're religious, you could say, God, take it from here. I trust you. I don't trust myself, but I trust you. and I know that you have my back. But the thing that I've been working with lately is just breathing, just closing my eyes and taking a deep breath through the nose, 4, maybe 5 seconds, and then holding it for 4 seconds, and then letting it go for between 4 and 6 seconds, and then holding and resting for a few seconds. This slows everything down. The heart rate, the blood pressure. And yes, the fear will dissipate and you'll be able to access the present moment. And in the present moment, you're always safe. Fear is always about imagining a scary future, but it's never present when you're present.
Managing fear is so important. Can you share a personal experience where you applied these tools?
Hmm. Yeah. I would say I'm applying them right now as I prepare to go into the United States with this message, which is called Beyond Red and Blue, Keeping Your Heart Open in Divided Times. I live in Mexico, but I'm from the United States. And as I think about going and giving this talk, I feel terrified, scared of being judged and deeply criticized and having people walk out of the room and angry and all that. And so I'm managing fear right now. And one of the ways I manage it is by crying, by actually exaggerating the fear and telling the stories. What if they don't want me? What if they hate me? What if they walk out on me? What if I don't even get any gigs? What? And I start to cry as I think of the worst case scenarios. And the tears lessen the anxiety. And as I finish the crying, that's when I come back to the breath and I remind myself that this is God's work, that I'm not in charge. I don't have to worry about it. All is well. That's just one way I'm managing fear these days.
Ah, that's really remarkable. What role does nonviolent communication plays in this evolution?
Well, nonviolent communication is learning to speak and listen with the heart rather than with your opinions and your thoughts. And when the heart is concerned, we all have the same needs. We may have different ways and strategies of trying to meet our needs, but every human being wants to feel safe. Every human being wants love, no matter how hard they resist. The needs are all universal. So, nonviolent communication is meeting at the level of the universal commonality that we all share. We all have the same needs.
Can you give an example of how it can transform a tough conversation?
Sure. Uh, well, Marshall Rosenberg was the founder of nonviolent communication, and he was giving a talk in Palestine when somebody stood up and said, "Murderer." And he was referring to Marshall. And Marshall didn't respond with defense. He said, "Are you feeling angry and frustrated because of the ways that my country have been treating your people?" And he said, "Yeah, you're damn right. You know, you You're sending bombs. We're hungry. We need food, not bombs. And Marshall said, it sounds like you're really, really frustrated about not getting your basic needs met. And he said, yeah. And the conversation continued for 20 minutes with this man venting and Marshall Rosenberg just reflecting back to him what he heard this man say. And eventually, this man ended up inviting Marshall to his house for a beautiful dinner. So that's an example. When you don't return anger with defensiveness and you get curious about what that person's really feeling and needing. The Marshall didn't hear the word murderer. He didn't take it personally. And that's where miracles can happen.
That's a great example. How can a listener start practicing nonviolent communication?
Well, I would say there's a book on it called, I think, Introduction to Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. You gotta get the book. You gotta learn the language before you can start practicing it. And there are practice groups online, so you can jump right into practice groups. There's a lot of resources out there.
Yeah, sure. I'll go through the book. What challenges might face when trying to evolve during such polarized times?
Well, just the fact that the times are polarized is a challenge. People are losing their people. There's divorces. There's just a lot of challenges. Opinions are inflamed. There's a emotional inflammation going on. And the biggest challenge is, how do I choose love instead of conflict and fear? It always boils down to, really, there's just two choices: love and fear.
How can we stay resilient and motivated?
I would even just quote Gandhi: by making your spiritual practice more important than your day. You know, he would start his day meditating, and he might have an 18-hour salt march ahead of him, but he was like, "No, I'm going to meditate for an hour in the morning." And one of his helpers said, "Mahatma, we need to go. It's a long day ahead of us, and there's so many responsibilities." And Gandhi said, "All the more reason for me to spend this time with God." So it's that attitude. It's take care of our spirit, our soul, our peace, and let everything else flow from that.
Staying resilient is the ultimate key. So, what advice do you have for those feeling overwhelmed?
I am overwhelmed myself. Um, Lots of movement, lots of breathing, lots of exercise, lots of prayer, lots of meditation. This emotional freedom technique, tapping, you can find it online, and tap the anxiety and the overwhelm down. There's just so many tools. My goodness, Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga. Do your inner work and attend to your peace. There is nothing outside you more important than you cultivating your peace.
Uh huh. I completely agree. How can we build bridges and find common ground with those who have different views?
Well, I sat on an airplane next to two Trump people wearing MAGA hats. I had 4 hours with them. So I started a conversation. Do you have grandchildren? Yes. Oh, can I see pictures? Tell me about them. Oh, yeah. Da, da, da. Would you like to see a picture of my daughter? I said. And so we started to talk about about our children and their grandchildren and what they're most proud of. And, I said, what kind of future do you hope for them? And without mentioning Trump, we had a conversation and we had similar values. We wanted the same thing, you know, peace, prosperity, less war. It was fun, so I would say avoid political conversations and find common ground. And people love their children. People love lots of things. So you don't have to agree on politics in order to connect a human to human.
Building bridges is so crucial. What can our listeners do to start this process?
Well, at the risk of being repetitive, you start where you are and you build a bridge from your mind to your heart. Have you hugged somebody today? Have you looked into the eyes of a child? I personally have a stuffed animal that I hug and talk to my inner child to start the day. So you can build a bridge inside yourself before even venturing out of your house.
Such encouraging words. Where can our listeners find more of your work?
Scottsongs.com. That's SCOTTSONGS.com.
All right. Thank you, Scott, for sharing your incredible insights. To our listeners, let's take these lessons and start evolving in these challenging times. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review. Stay inspired and keep sparking the souls, everyone.